All right, hi guys. Today we're going to start with the It Takes Two to Talk from the Hannon Program for Parents. Just a short session on how routines are very important for you and your child and how that can do a lot for their language and development. So, again, we're going to be discussing how we can take turns with our children and within those interactions, how they can form communication and how it can continue to go. With that, let's get started. So let's start with our first slide. As you can see, there's a car here, which is going to be very important for us in a second. So we're going to start by looking at routines. So this can be a great way to take turns with your child in interactions. So let's think about different routines that we can participate in as adults. So we get ready to go to work in the morning. We pretty much have the same route that we take. Maybe your children are in sports, like you're used to that every certain night of the week, stuff like that. But for this example, we are going to talk about driving. So I assume you all are driving every day, to work or to different events for your children. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
So think about that. So when we started driving, when we were 16 years old, I imagine we were not as confident or competent drivers as we are now, correct?
Right.
Yeah. And that is because we were not in the routine of driving every single day or practicing what that looks like. So again, let's think about ourselves as a 16-year-old and not now. So when we were 16, we had to learn where the gear shift was, how we're going to turn the wheel when we back out, in which direction, and where to place our mirrors. But now that is not the case, right? Like we are familiar with our setting, our surroundings, and we are able to competently drive our vehicle. And the key word here is that these behaviors become predictable, and that we also want to keep that in mind with our children today as we keep talking. In order for predictability, repetition is very key, and that's the point that we're getting with driving as well. In addition, let's think if we are getting into a different vehicle every time that we're driving, we're going to have some difficulties with that, right? Like orienting ourselves to the vehicle and stuff like that. So think about that with your child as well. Like if we're off and we're not following sequential steps with our kids, then that can be difficult for them to develop a routine similar to how we do it still as adults. So luckily for us though, we usually get in the same car. It's familiar, it's predictable, and we are able to better succeed because of the predictability. So let's move on to slide 3. Whoops, there we go. So talking about routines, let's first off start with what some of our children's routines look like. So I'd like for someone, if they feel comfortable, to please describe some of the steps that you guys see in your child's routines at home. So for example, we could think about bath time, the steps of bath time, turning on the water, filling up the tub. If your children like toys, I know that's a big fun thing at bath time is putting toys in the tub, cleaning up the child, wrapping up in the towel when they're done. So those are all sequential steps that they take for bath time. So do you guys have any that you guys can think of that are specific to your all's house?
Yeah, so mine's bedtime. So before I, put my daughter to bed, we change her clothes. She puts on her favorite pair of pajamas, and then she likes to have a snack before bed, so she'll eat her snack, and then I'll go lay her down in her bed, but I always read to her for about 20 minutes, and then she finally is able to go to sleep. So she knows that every night mom is going to read to her before she goes to sleep.
No, that's a perfect example. Thank you for sharing that. That they know that they get to pick out their jammies that they wear. They get to pick that stuff, and they get to pick out the book, and they are excited for that. So that's very good that those routines are involved in your bedtime. Thank you for that example. An important aspect of routines is that they must be repeated many times in order for them to stick with your child. So when a routine is repeated many times, the child can learn every aspect of it, such as picking out their jammies, getting their book, getting their snack, like you had mentioned. So they become familiar with these steps, words, sounds, gestures, whatever we're doing to communicate with our child, they are better able to understand that. So after a while, they learn to anticipate what is supposed to happen next. Have you guys noticed that this behavior kind of is exhibited in your child after a while? she's ready to go get her jammies.
Yeah,
and she might
for
even
sure.
tell you that.
Yeah, for
or
sure.
gesture towards the drawer that they're in, something like that.
Yeah.
So in a routine, each individual involved takes on a specific role. Both the parent and child have their role to play. So at first, your child might need your help for you to get to play a part in their role that we're doing here. But eventually, it may switch over and they could take over the routine. So for example, in the game Peekaboo that you're playing with your child, they may pick up on the fact that at the boo, that's the big exciting part, and they may take over and then they start doing peekaboo to you. So they're sort of understanding the aspect of the game or the routine by going to request to pick out a book or doing the boo and peekaboo. So moving on to slide 4. I want to mention 3 kinds of routines today. First, starting with daily routines. Like we had said, bath time, getting dressed, snack time can all be examples of those. So can anyone else give me an example of a daily routine that happens here also?
Yeah, my kids are 1 and 3, so both my husband and I work, so we take them to kind of like a daycare center during the day. And every morning, the routine that I think of is, getting them up for their day center and getting them dressed, and then, eating breakfast together and putting them in the high chair, cutting up food, and then just munching away. That's kind of what I think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that getting ready in the morning is a really big key part to start the child's day. Not only are they doing so many things at the daycare, I assume, but getting them ready is a huge part of the day that I'm sure they pick up on, and I'm sure they're definitely ready to eat most of the time, and they will be ready to tell you what they want too. So that's a great example. So that's the first one with daily routines. The second one, really fun, different people games. So that's kind of what we were talking about with the peekaboo concept. So that can also be nursery rhymes or songs that you and your child enjoy. I know there's so many silly ones out there that I'm sure that you guys have in your families. And I find these to be the most fun because they usually have a high point or a really fun moment, like we mentioned with the boo and peekaboo, that the child can get excited about and pick up on more easily because it's so exciting for them and they find a lot of enjoyment from that. And finally, we have special routines. So these are routines that you create just for you and your child. So this might be a little more tricky to think about, but can anyone think of an example of a special routine that they have in their home?
Yeah, so my son has an autoimmune disorder, so he has medicine that he has to take at specific times every single day.
Yeah.
So he knows in the morning when it's time to take them, he knows how many pills he has to take, what kind, is it a hard one he calls it, or is it the liquid one like a drink?
Yeah.
And he's very he knows exactly when it's time to take that.
That's a very good example. Thank you. I'm sure not all of us can relate to that in our homes, but that is a specific special routine that you guys have formed with your son, and that's very awesome. Thank you for sharing. So after we discussed type 1, 2, and 3 of these routines, the main takeaway is that once your child is familiar with a routine, any kind of routine, as we mentioned, you can use it to create opportunities for him to take turns and use language in a different way. All right, so now on the next slide, we're going to watch a short video of this child, Sean, and his mom interacting in a game kind of song. So let's take a look at that.
Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies. Hush, hush, we all fall down. Picking up the daisies, picking up the daisies. Hush, hush, we all stand up. Again, ring around the rosy.
So just like this prompt says up here, how could Sean's mom have built in opportunities for him to take turns in this routine, despite it looking like he's having a very enjoyable time? What are some things that maybe could have been done differently that we notice in this video?
sorry, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, she's going pretty fast, and he seems like a pretty young child, and she's not really giving him any opportunity to even like say a word.
Yeah, right. Like we notice he's not really verbalizing a lot. Like he's doing the gestures of up and going around, but a lot of the times where he could verbalize, maybe he's not because his mom is doing it for him. And I feel like that's a big thing that we can overlook at times as parents. I know I definitely have as well. All right, so now we're gonna watch another video.
Ring around.
It's the same one. Another video where maybe she does some things differently. So let's pay attention to those.
Ring around the rosy. Ring around the rosy. A pocket full of posies. Hush, hush. We all fall down. Picking the daisies, picking the daisies. Hush, hush, we all stand.
All right, so with that video, what did Sean's mom do differently that maybe seemed like he was more engaged?
She definitely paused more and like slowed down a lot in comparison to the last video.
Yeah, that's definitely what I was thinking too. So I think she adjusted this routine specifically by slowing down, like you had mentioned, leaning in, waiting for his response. And what did we notice? He was more verbal. He was anticipating what was going to happen next. He fell down before the down, and he was pulling up the daisy. So I think we noticed that he was more engaged with that, which is ultimately what we are trying to learn here today is that we can predict what's coming next in the routine when we give our child the opportunity to do so. So thank you all, and I hope you guys learned something today.
Thank you.
Oh, I need to get